On the night of August 31st, 1939, several operatives in Polish uniforms infiltrated the radio station at Gleiwitz in Upper Silesia, Germany. After seizing the facilities, the saboteurs broadcast a concise anti-German message in Polish. The crime scene was undeniable, with several infiltrators sacrificing their lives for the cause against the Nazi regime. The police and press found the evidence irrefutable and soon sealed the case against the irascible Polish people. Immediately after, the Fuhrer issued a declaration of war, alleging the violent provocations of Polish assaults in Gleiwitz and several other places simultaneously. The following day, the German forces struck their northern neighbors in an attack that many historians consider the first official action of World War II. And while the Gleiwitz incident was a made-up excuse to declare war on the Polish, the Germans could not have expected that the same day they invaded Poland, the defenders would do the same in German territory. Casus Belli. Operation Himmler comprised a series of special efforts orchestrated by the SS and the Abwehr to serve German purposes along the Polish border at the outbreak of World War II. These actions were intended to create the appearance of aggression against Germany and justify the invasion of Poland, which was scheduled to happen the following day. Much of what is known about the incident at Gleiwitz comes from the declaration of Alfred Naujax at the Nuremberg trials many years later, as he confessed to having organized the setup under Gestapo orders. To justify their actions and make sure their cause seemed fair to their people, the Nazi High Command covered their interests merely a day prior to the deployment of German forces in Poland. The Germans procured Polish army uniforms, equipment, and identification cards for the deception, and many prisoners from concentration camps were disguised as Polish saboteurs and ordered to attack radio stations. Several prisoners from the Dachau concentration camp were even drugged and shot to manufacture evidence, a staged casus belli, or a justification for war. Some sources incorrectly refer to the incident as Operation Canned Goods, as the German operatives designated them under the codename Conserve. The setup was ready, and like the Fuhrer told his generals a week before the events, quote, "Its credibility doesn't matter. The victor will not be asked whether he told the truth." A matter of convenience. Upon coming to power, Adolf Hitler signed a major foreign policy initiative, a non-aggression pact with Poland that proved to be an unpopular move among his supporters. Many Germans resented that Poland had received former German territories, including the provinces of West Prussia, Poznan, and Upper Silesia, after their humiliating defeat in World War I and the subsequent Treaty of Versailles. However, Hitler had a plan, and he actively sought the non-aggression pact to neutralize another nation, as there was a possibility that the Polish would become allies with the French and form a military blockade against Germany before the weakened country had a chance to rebuild and rearm. In the meantime, France, but especially Great Britain, maintained a foreign policy of appeasement throughout the decade. The primary purpose of such a scheme was to keep the apparent peace in the continent by making limited concessions to German demands. And while the British population had a generalized opinion that tended to favor the revision of the territorial and military provisions of the treaty, neither Britain nor France were militarily prepared for an open encounter against the expanding Third Reich. Germany then revoked the limitations in 1935 and remilitarized the Rhineland the following year. Then, in March of 1938, the country annexed Austria, and Britain and France eventually complied. The Germans soon threatened to wage war against Czechoslovakia, to which Britain and French leaders responded with the Munich Agreement, ceding the Sudetenland Czech region in exchange for an apparent peace. But despite Hitler's promises to resolve future conflicts peacefully, Germany tore apart Czechoslovakia in early 1939. Britain and France then promised to safeguard the integrity of the Polish state, but Hitler would be dissuaded neither by threats nor concessions. Allegations. In the spring of 1939, the Fuhrer announced Germany's withdrawal from the non-aggression pact with Poland, but negotiated one with the Soviet Union instead, thus guaranteeing that they would not intervene. However, the leaders of both nations secretly agreed to partition Poland between the two, quenching their imperialist appetites. For months, German newspapers, politicians, and Hitler himself made countless accusations against the Polish authorities, claiming that they had organized or tolerated the brutal ethnic cleansing of Germans in Poland. Furthermore, they alleged that Poland was teaming up with Britain and France to encircle and dismember Germany. On September 1st, the day after the Gleiwitz incident, Germany finally launched their strategic plan for the invasion of their neighbors, Fall Weiß, or Case White, precipitating Europe into the largest conflict in history. That same day, Hitler addressed the lower house of the legislature, or Reichstag, citing the so-called severe border incidents as justification for the invasion. Several American correspondents were summoned to investigate the scene, but no neutral parties were allowed to dig deep into the incident, provoking disbelief in the German version among the international public. Regardless, the surprise attack began at dawn, when Germany deployed an advance force of over 2,000 tanks, supported by nearly 900 bombers and over 400 fighter aircraft. A total of 60 divisions and roughly 1.5 million men participated. From East Prussia and Germany in the north, and Silesia and Slovakia in the south, the Nazi troops pierced the Polish defenses along their shared border as they marched relentlessly towards Warsaw in a massive encirclement maneuver. But in an ironic twist of fate, the Poles would retaliate in a way the German propagandists could never have expected. Equals. While the Poles did not provoke the Nazi invasion like it was proclaimed, they answered the attack in a way the Germans never expected. Even more telling was the fact that as of the first day of the invasion, crossing the German border was forbidden for Polish nationals, as they would be accused of provoking a conflict. Still, when the Germans flooded their homeland, the proud Polish people rose to arms. The situation was most advantageous in the Wielkopolska province, or Greater Poland, located between the main invasion routes. Thus, the attack was relatively tame. However, one of the most significant Polish counterattacks was the raid on Fraustadt, the direct answer to the occupation of Rawicz and the bombing of Leszno. Only a day later, on September 2nd, the Polish forces were able to retake Rawicz. Meanwhile, another unit crossed the border and attacked the German side in Königsdorf, effectively disrupting a column of several dozen vehicles. Encouraged by their fellow defenders' success, Brigadier General Roman Abraham of the Wielkopolska Infantry Brigade set out to execute a more ambitious raid in the town of Fraustadt. That morning, his forces conducted aerial reconnaissance around the village, while the 55th Infantry Regiment gathered its strength. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Over 300 soldiers comprised the bulk of the main attack force, which was commanded by Captain Edmund Lessees. The raiding party consisted of 2 companies from the 55th, an artillery platoon for support, and panzer and heavy machine gun platoons. The 17th Ulan Regiment attacked from the north, while the south was covered by a military bicycle platoon and a tankette squadron led by Abrahams. Communication between units was provided by the cavalry and the cyclists. Notably, the cyclists were an astonishing advantage to the Polish people that day. As Polish journalist Maciej Nowak-Kryer wrote, quote, "The presence of the cyclists in the army can be surprising. They were, however, an indispensable element of contemporary army forces in most of Europe. They were faster than infantry. They did not need fuel as the motorcyclists did, and contrary to the infantry, they did not have to take care of any live creatures. These were fast and agile forces, which would get on very well in a difficult terrain." The operation began at around 5 p.m. Buses transported infantry units to the starting point, which was the village of Długie Stare right at the border. The soldiers then lined up, as Polish artillery shelled the Greatschutz watchtower in Geiersdorf, a town ceded to Poland in the Versailles Treaty. But the machine guns could not get closer to the anti-tank ditches and had to stay behind the border and offer cover from there. The Germans were utterly taken aback. While their motorcycle unit struggled to get a hold of the situation, they were nonetheless pushed and forced to retreat. And as the battle in the watchtower raged on, the tankettes suddenly entered the arena. Small and turretless, the vehicles were armed only with a machine gun. Still, they were quick and nimble, allowing the Polish units to swiftly occupy Geiersdorf. However, the armored vehicles managed to dislodge the last groups of German defenders with the support of the infantry, and the shelling on Fraustadt began. An unforgettable day. The Polish artillery platoon shelled the German military barracks located in Fraustadt from their secured positions in Geiersdorf. Meanwhile, the village was bewildered, and the army units soon retreated, as masses of civilians blocked the road to the nearby town of Głogów. All the calls for help were futile. The operation achieved its mission of damaging the military barracks. The shelling also battered the town's church tower, and the infantry was able to reach the toll house. One platoon even made it as far as 8 kilometers into German territory and captured several prisoners of war. Having fired 36 shells in Fraustadt, the Polish artillery finally started to withdraw the infantry, then followed after dark and regrouped in Leszno. Noak Kryer wrote that, in a tragicomic incident during the retreat through Częstochowa, quote, "The local 5th column took the retreating Polish soldiers for the invading Germans and greeted them with Nazi flags. Obviously, it was exposed and neutralized in a flash." The successful raid bolstered the Polish soldiers' morale, showing that the Nazis were not an undefeatable enemy. However, the win had practically no strategic significance. There was no point in attacking the Germans with greater strength, because Leszno was still threatened and would be unnecessarily weakened. Indeed, Fraustadt was most likely the only German border town shelled by the Polish that September, a humiliation never forgotten by the Nazis. Years later, the Gestapo hunted down Captain Lasses. Still, the bravery of the Polish soldiers raised their army's spirit and pushed them to continue the fight. Moreover, the effective operation might have contributed to the outstanding performance of the Poznan army in the later Battle of the Bzura. On the downside, a policeman, a customs officer, and many civilians were wounded or worse. The victims had a funeral service, and a memorial was erected in the name of victims of the Polish invasion. To this day, the monument at the outskirts of Wyschowa, along the road to Leszno, commemorates the unlikely victory of the raid on Fraustadt. As Noak Kryer put it, quote, "A panicky runaway of weak Polish troops crushed by the roller of German forces is a false and unfair image of the September 1939 held in the awareness of most Poles. The truth is we were capable of fighting our aggressor almost as equals, or even surprise our invader with our bold counterattacks, during which we would enter the territory of the Third Reich and occupy German villages." Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoy epic battles and would like to learn more about world history and military campaigns, don't miss out on all our Dark Documentaries channels. Also, please click on the thumbs up button and make sure to activate notifications with the bell icon. Stay tuned for more.